And joining us live on this big story is Deepak Bhojwani, former Indian ambassador to Latin America. Thank you very much, Ambassador Bhojwani, for joining us today evening as well on India Tonight. You heard what the External Affairs Minister stated. He essentially underlined in Russia that sustaining energy cooperation in trade is important for both the countries. This amidst pressure from the US administration. So does this essentially mean a no-deal scenario between India and the United States, given the fact that the August 25th talks are not happening anymore?
Yeah, that's true. Well, that's true. No one knows. A lot depends upon how President Trump and his administration play this. As I mentioned yesterday on your own channel, it seems that Mr. Trump has postponed consideration of what he calls secondary sanctions. The primary sanctions of 25% may well kick in from the 27th of August. You know, he imposed 25% sanctions on almost all Indian exports to the US, and then belatedly said, I'll impose an extra 25% unless India stops buying oil from Russia. Now, I don't think that's going to happen because yesterday's news is that our companies have ordered extra cargoes for September. There was a bit of a dip in July and early August, but I think it's going back up. I think the government is gearing up to tell the United States administration that what's in our interest is in our interest. It's very simple. We refine over 5 million barrels of crude a day, of which 1.7 million barrels is imported from Russia. At peak, it has perhaps gone down a little. Now imagine if we get even a $1 lower price than we would get from anywhere else. Just $1. That's $1.7 million a day. It doesn't take any imagination to see how valuable that is for a country like India. So there's no question. And we've also said it's not as if we are deliberately buying Russian crude in preference to other crudes. No, we are buying whatever's the cheapest. If Russian crude tomorrow becomes a little more expensive than Saudi or Iraqi or whichever, we'll buy those other crudes. It's as simple as that. It's a commercial transaction and it's a global market. It's a market that the West has been touting for so long. You heard the minister say, and others also have been saying, that initially the US was telling us to please buy Russian crude so that it can stabilize the market. The US has also taken Venezuela and Iran off the market for their own political reasons. So as a result of that, those two countries can't supply oil to us, which we've been buying in large quantities before sanctions were imposed on them. So I think it's an absolutely sensible move for India to continue buying oil from Russia.
You know, Ambassador, as you make those opening remarks as well, let me ask you the other aspect, what S. Jaishankar also spoke about, that a major trade imbalance with Russia has accompanied that growth. You know, in fact, talking about those numbers, he said that it's increased from USD 6.6 billion to USD 58.9 billion, which is about 9 times. And he's also gone on to state, and I quote, that needs to be addressed urgently. How do you read into that?
No, it's absolutely right. It should be addressed. The problem is this. You have countries which provide certain resources or products which other countries want. China, for instance, may have a huge imbalance with a country to which it doesn't export so many products, but it imports their natural resources. The US does something similar. Now, India has a need for Russian oil, also Russian fertilizers, and we also buy a lot of defense material from them. Naturally, there's going to be an imbalance, and the Russian economy is not that big. The population is about 150 million. So basically, and also historically, there hasn't been that much trade in other commodities. We've been traditionally exporting agricultural products, tea, a little bit of pharmaceuticals, and so on. But as the minister himself said, we've got to now see if bilaterally we can work through both our governments to enhance the trade willfully, which means you make attempts. You tell your corporations that please look at India as a serious source. Our own exporters also have to take the trouble. Our exporters, many of them may have become lazy because the US places an order for, say, 500,000 shirts. And that's it. They say, fine, we've got this order, they're being paid in dollars, and that's it. You know, what we have to do is look at other markets like Russia, etc., particularly since US sanctions are going to kick in. So our exporters are going to have to also take the trouble to reach out to these markets. You can't expect somebody to come and say, all right, my country is importing so much, exporting so much more to you, so I'm going to do you the favor of importing shirts which I may have got from China, and in fact cheaper, who knows? So you've got to be competitive.
Right, right. Absolutely. India needs to diversify its trade basket. In fact, it is undertaking some of those measures now. We are reaching out to 50 countries across the globe to sort of mitigate the impact of Donald Trump's additional 25% tariffs. But Ambassador, I have to take this breaking piece of information that's just coming in. Well, the Chinese envoy to India, Shu Feihong, has stated that tariff wars, trade wars are disrupting global economic and trade system. He's also stated that US imposed up to 50% tariff on India and even threatened more, and China fully opposes it. That's essentially the word that's coming in from a Chinese envoy to India. He's also stated that together we can open a new chapter of Dragon Elephant Tango. That's essentially what the Chinese envoy to India has said on India-China ties. And of course, we will be looking at that very, very crucial meeting of the Prime Minister when he goes to the SCO summit and meets with Chinese President Xi Jinping later this month. And of course, the kind of synergies that both the countries can really draw as far as trade and economy is concerned, that will be interesting to watch out for. But let me go back to the point that we were discussing about, a deal essentially between India and the United States. In fact, news has just come in today that European Union and the United States, they've finalized a deal with 15% tariffs and a whopping $750 billion of an energy pledge that European Union has given to the United States. So can India offer similar pledges as far as tariff talks are concerned? And how will that in turn impact its ties with Russia? Will that have an impact at all?
Let me give you some facts. I was told just today, and I saw a piece in which the Japanese have pledged to invest something like $500 billion. Now, analysts have seen that in the fine print, what has not been publicized is that these $500 billion will be, the investment where the Japanese will invest will be decided by the Trump administration. The profits will be distributed in such a way that they go more to the US. It's not to the Japanese companies. The Japanese, I understand, informally are furious. When Trump made the deal with Ukraine, signed a deal a couple of 3 months ago for the mineral exploitation, what was he doing? He was telling Ukraine that I've given you $200, $300 billion, and I'm going to recover that money from the minerals for which you have signed this agreement. So look at the fine print in all these deals. I don't know what the EU-US deal is going to look like, but it's very easy to give a figure out and say $750 billion will come in. This is exactly what Trump does. He did it in Saudi Arabia, he did it in Qatar, and said these guys are going to buy this and that. What is the fine print? I don't know. I'm not saying it will be bad for them. Good luck. I don't think India is interested. We have a huge amount of investment through our private sector primarily in the US. It's not insignificant. But the thing is that we also have strategic assets under our belt. For instance, the defense industry, for which the US has been wooing us a long time. After we signed the 2008 India-US nuclear deal, we said, yes, you can come here and construct nuclear plants. That's got a little stuck in the small print of who will be liable for any accidents, etc. But not a single US plant has been set up, whereas Russia has set up 8 nuclear reactors, 8 nuclear plants. And they're going full tilt ahead. So the thing is, it works both ways. And India, of course, India doesn't have $500 billion to invest in the US. We are going to invest in our own country for Atmanirbharta, for more self-reliant industries. We need chips, we need solar panels, we need our own defense equipment, we need to manufacture and lay down infrastructure. We cannot be investing in the US in the hope that the tariffs will come down on $80 or $90 billion worth of exports to the US. And by the way, let's also understand one thing. What we export to the US is not paid for as charity. The US importers are getting value for their money. So it's not as if we are, the tariffs, the exports from.
Right, Ambassador. In fact, as you make those imperative points, you're right. I'd have to interject you there because I'm afraid we're running short of time. But fair enough. We're also looking forward to another opportunity to have you once again on the show to share with us more insights. But for the moment,